You're listening or watching the Stop the Mind Screw Show. I'm your host, Kathy Owen, certified fitness trainer and life coach since 2002, teaching Stop the Mind Screw process. What is that? Stop mind screwing yourself out of success, health, wealth, and happiness. Let's get into the episode. I'm starting a new project, and it's thrilled me to no end. What I'm going to be doing, and this is my first episode, so I'm kind of out of flow, and I'm going to explain that in a second. So I'm going to start teaching from mind mapping, and I learned this from my mentor, Joseph Rodriguez. And the reason I say I'm out of flow, because flow is where challenge meets skill. And I'm really unsure about a lot of the aspects of doing this, like the Descript is a thing I use to record my videos, and teaching from the mind map. So keep that in mind while you watch today's episode. And if you'd like a copy of the mind map, you can find that at kathyowen.com/mind map. Link will be in the show notes and the description. Let's get. All right. I have been obsessed with habits and behavior modification and personal development for many, many years. And especially habits, because habits, as a personal trainer, I can tell you that if I can help my client create a habit, my job is 99% done, complete. But habits, as we will learn today, are very delicate. Today, we're talking from the book, The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business by Charles. We're going to talk about replacing habits. That's one of the best ways you can find to create a great habit and actually transform your life in magic fashion. We're going to talk about the layers of change. We're going to talk about habits and stop the mind screw process. And of course, we're going to touch on reality, transurfing, and habits and how they all tie. So, replacing a habit. Your brain does not know the difference between a good and a bad habit. So, if you're doing something that is not beneficial to you personally, your brain's not going to go, oh, that was not good. If it feels good, it's going to stick with it. So from the book, Charles Duhigg said that studies from the past decade examining the impacts of exercise on daily routines, when people start habitually exercising, even as infrequently as once a week, they start changing other unrelated patterns in their lives, often unknowingly. Typically, people who exercise start eating better and become more productive at work. But for many people, exercise is a keystone habit that triggers widespread change. If you focus on changing or cultivating keystone habits, you can cause widespread shifts because, as he said, that the habit becomes a keystone and other things start changing. Making your bed every morning is correlated with better productivity, a greater sense of well-being, and stronger skills at sticking with a budget. Something as simple as that. So when we're talking about a cue, your routine, and your reward, what exactly does that mean when it comes to a habit? Well, think about the person who eats junk food. And let's just pull out something out of the hat, those fiery Cheetos. When they see them, or when they are in a situation, which is their cue, they go, oh, I gotta have some fiery Cheetos. So the routine is they purchase them and they eat them, or they pull them out of the pantry and they eat them. The reward that they get is the feeling that those Cheetos give you. And a lot of times, unconsciously, that is a comfort. So the cue happens to be the habit or the place that you are at. The routine is what you do, and the reward is what you get. A lot of this habit loop is what this is called, is unconscious behavior. As I said, the brain cannot tell the difference between good habits and bad habits. The habit loop of cue, routine, reward stays the same unless, here's the magic of it all, you create a new habit. Habits are unconscious regardless of the lesson. What does that mean? So habits are just things that you stick with. If you're not even hungry and you eat, it's just a habit. It's unconscious and regardless of the lesson. That is why weight loss and junk food go hand in hand, or no weight loss and junk food go hand in hand, because the habit is unconscious. In the book, he talks about this man named Eugene. He had meningitis, and it depleted the part of his brain where, I'm just going to make it simple, where habits are made. And it's funny, what they studied this man and his behaviors to understand why habits are formed and how they affect us. If a habit is formed via emotional feelings, that habit is even stronger. So take those Cheetos. If those Cheetos happen to give you a feeling of reward and a craving, you're going to start craving them. And we're going to talk about craving in a minute. But what they found with Eugene was he would be at home and he had cues in the house that made him think he had to eat breakfast, whether he was hungry or not. So sometimes he would eat breakfast 4 times a day, and his breakfast even consisted of bacon and eggs and everything. He did not even know he ate a few minutes before that. He did not even know he ate, because that habit or his reticular activating system had been damaged with the meningitis. That right there taught us so much about habits and the feelings and emotions that go with it. And let me tell you, later in the book, he talks about how Eugene started aging and he started having major issues, like he started gaining weight. He needed to exercise, and they had to start watching what he ate, and he could not understand why his wife was hiding the bacon from him, because it was always in the same place, or, he just had a habit of it. He was like, I have to eat my breakfast. And he had a habit of it, and he would eat it, I'm not kidding you, 4 times in a morning, because he wasn't even hungry. This explains why those Cheetos can really get you, or whatever that junk food is, or whatever that bad habit is. They explained how it affects gambling, how it affects alcoholism, how it affects your weight loss, your exercise, your productivity, everything. So craving is what powers the habit loop, the cue, the response, the reward. So cultivate a craving that drives the loop. Cultivate a craving that drives the loop. Instead of craving Cheetos, when you grab the bag, you're doing it unconsciously. You can cultivate a craving that makes it better. What they did with Eugene was they started teaching him how to exercise and how to get more movement in his day. So at least he was getting some of that calorie burn that he needed to do. And they put it in as a habit. What they did, and what we want to do when we're trying to eliminate a bad habit or start a new habit, is we want to set a clear cue. Do the behavior and then set a clear reward. What is a clear cue to you? It could be your cell phone is disturbing you. So you turn off your cues for a certain amount of time. You do the behavior, and then your reward is you got the behavior done, or whatever motivates you. For exercise and fitness, a clear cue could be laying out your workout clothes and seeing them there, and that is your cue that you go to the gym. You do the behavior, you go to the gym, and then you set a clear reward. That reward could be buying a new pair of tennis shoes after you do so many workouts, or whatever rewards you. So for me, my clear cue happens to be affirmations. I don't like to wake up in the morning. I don't like to get out of bed, but I have to exercise in the morning for everything to affect my entire day. So before I even get out of bed, as soon as the alarm goes off, I set affirmations and intentions to help me go, okay, it's going to be a great day, or I know this workout's going to make me feel better. I'm getting up. The hard part is just getting out of bed, those types of things. Then you do the behavior, go to the gym. By the way, the gym is not the only type of exercise for you to get fit, and set a clear reward. So that reward would be, for me personally, I'm motivated by achievement. So I would say, I notice I feel a lot better during the day. I am more productive, and therefore that's my reward. On here, you notice I talk about Cinnabon. Cinnabon is a cinnamon roll company that really played on this. They played on the cue, the response, and the reward. So the cue would be, they would actually put their cinnamon roll business at the end of the food court, like away from the other restaurants, so that that cinnamon smell would go throughout the mall area where they were close to, and it would create that craving. And it would pull, their reward was people would spend money with them and buy the cinnamon rolls. Target does the same thing. They have the popcorn popping in there, and the atmosphere, trust me, they have the atmosphere set up for craving. So we want to replace these habits by referring over to our routines and change. Because remember, there's cue, routine, reward. So the routine is something we just get in the habit of doing. We just get in the habit of doing, so you don't even have to think about it. That's what's the power of a habit. So you can interrupt a routine. There was a girl they studied that was biting her fingernails, and she could not stop. I mean, she bit them so much that she was down to her fingers were bleeding, and she couldn't stop. But what they did was they interrupted the routine. They found something that either gave her a craving. I mean, you can't just interrupt the routine by painting different polish on there or doing something that would irritate you. For her, it was something else. And you have to find what your craving is to interrupt that routine and catch you in the habit. On my fitness routine, I have to interrupt my sleep, and I like to sleep. Now, how do I do that? I had to find a reward that would actually tell me I have to get out of bed and I have to go. And you may have to find the same thing. You don't like to exercise. Granted, there's so many different types of exercise, and that you don't have to go to the gym to exercise. I mean, that's not what we're talking about today, but I am telling you that you can interrupt that routine and change it to something more beneficial. Belief and reality transurfing, which we will touch on in a moment, but belief is easier when it comes from a community, and pendulums and reality transurfing. And what that means is we're talking about a pendulum is just a thought structure that everybody thinks. And it's very contagious, and it only wants your energy. Now, there are constructive and destructive pendulums. So what you're trying to do in your routine and change to replace your habit is you're trying to change your beliefs about that habit. You're trying to change the beliefs and join a community or get yourself on a pendulum that will change that belief and actually take advantage of how the pendulum works. And we'll talk more about that when we get to reality transurfing in the review. A habit cannot be eradicated. It must be replaced. Take Eugene, for example, in the man that had the meningitis damage to his brain. They tried to eradicate his habit by hiding his food from him in the kitchen. And this would irritate him. So he would get so angry. And remember how I said that emotion is a strong tie to a habit, and it's unconscious, especially with Eugene, because his part of his brain that affected his habits did not work properly. What they did was they replaced it with something else. They found what his cues were. His cues were the morning light in the house, the way things were set up in the house, the way he would work in the morning, they started studying his behavior, and then they replaced it with something more beneficial so that he wouldn't go, if he already ate breakfast, they replaced it with walking and taking his walk. And then by the time he got back from his walk, the morning light wasn't there, and he was on to another part of his unconscious habit day. And again, change is even better when there is a group involved. And again, we're going to talk about pendulums and how to use that to your advantage to help you change your routine and your cues and your rewards. So let's go into layers of change. In his book, Atomic Habit, James Clear discusses 3 layers of behavior change. Number 1 is identity-based habits. This level is concerned with changing your beliefs, your worldview, your self-image, your judgments about yourself and others. And most of the beliefs, assumptions, and biases you hold are based on this level. This one is pretty powerful too, because to me, this one, I talk about toxic positivity a lot. And what happens is these people have these beliefs that positivity is toxic. So they turn down the habit of thinking positive because they're like, oh no, that's toxic. And that is just a belief. That is just a belief and an assumption. And we have to change that we have to change that identity to get to what we want. Changing your process. This level is concerned with changing your habits and systems. Implementing a morning routine, for example. So once you implement a morning routine, it's almost like stacking your habits, because you've started your morning routine and you've got your habit going of doing that, and then everything snowballs. You build momentum that way. As much as you may not like waking up in the morning, like myself, once you start doing that, one of the rewards is that process, because it starts tricking your brain to, hey, this feels good, like those fire Cheetos. And the third layer of behavior change is changing your outcomes. And this level is concerned with changing your results. What does that all mean? Well, when we change our results and we notice that, oh, this morning routine is benefiting me, then we can also start stacking more habits and more rewards that come with that. So you change your outcomes and you go, the fiery Cheetos are not working for me. I'm paying attention to that instead of mindlessly eating them. The process of behavior change always starts with awareness. It always starts with awareness. You need to be aware of your habits before you can change them. You've got to be aware. It's like the person eating the fried Cheetos when they're fixing to eat lunch in about 30 minutes. They're not even aware, they're unconscious of this behavior. A habit is a behavior that has been repeated enough times to become automatic. The ultimate purpose of habits is to solve problems of life with as little energy and effort as possible. So, a habit is a behavior that has been repeated enough times to become automatic. Take, for example, backing your car out of the driveway. You put your car in reverse and think about the very first time you did this. You had to think about everything. You had to think about how to put it in reverse, which gear to put it in, of course, and looking in the mirrors and what the pace has to be. You can't automatically step on the gas, and that takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of effort. You can only think one thought at a time, so that takes a lot of focus. But once it becomes a habit and it's been repeated enough times, it becomes automatic. So guess what? Our brain can start thinking about other things, like maybe what are we going to have for lunch today, what's on our meeting agenda, or what our plans are for the weekend, that kind of stuff. One of the most satisfying feelings is the feeling of making progress. So if you're feeling like you're making progress, like I started before I even opened this episode, I said, this is my first mind map teaching. There's going to be mistakes. I'd rather be this out there and have the practice of doing this, and that gives me a feeling of making progress and staying consistent. But I've got the habit down of already being consistent, but I need to make progress too. And there we go. I'm getting satisfied because the feeling of making progress. And the key to finding and fixing the causes of your bad habits is to reframe the associations you have about them. So identify your bad habits with awareness and then reframe the associations you have about them. If your bad habit is that junk food, become aware of why you're eating it and then reframe the associations you have about them so that it'll be easier to turn it down when it comes up again. Because guess what? It's going to come up again. So you want to create an environment where doing the right thing is as easy as possible. People with high self-control tend to spend less time in tempting situations. It's easier to avoid temptation than it is to resist it, especially in the very beginning. So our self-control is something we develop over time. And that's like a muscle. You just have to work it. So find where your temptations are so that you can easily avoid it at first, and then you won't have to resist it. There's that awareness as well in there. And I really like this one. Increase the friction associated with bad behaviors. When friction is high, habits are difficult. For example, you get rid of all the junk food in your house. Well, I'm not going to go to the store and buy those fried Cheetos when the friction is too high with that. It's just too much to get into it. And if you really think about your bad habits, and we all have them because we are human, try to become aware, number one, and then replace it with something that's going to cause you friction to get to that bad habit. What I also like to do, and this isn't even in the notes here, is I like to still bring in a little treat or reward. So if you'd really like those, maybe just have one in the house where you can have one a day and then slowly start taking it away. And flow, integration. Flow is where challenge meets skill. And as I started this episode, I said, I am facing a new challenge by using Descript for my video editing. And I don't really understand it, but I am trying to integrate the challenge and the skill. As well as I don't really know what's recording on the screen, and it just, I don't have a lot of control. But I know I need to do this. So I set clear goals when I'm doing something like that so I can stay in flow. When I start to get frustrated or irritated, I walk away for at least 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the minimum. Then when I come back, I can see it differently. On this video, for example, I've recorded this 2 times already. And every time I get a little bit better, but I have to get this out there because done is better than perfect. And it's not going to be perfect on my first video release, but it's going to get better over time. So that is how I find harmony between the challenge and the skill, and I still stay in flow. Flow is where action and awareness become one. And it just happens, and you lose track of time. Distractions are excluded from consciousness. Fear, doubt, and indecision tapers away. I can't tell you how powerful it is like this. It's like a professional athlete out there on the court. You can watch them, and it looks like they're not afraid. They don't have any doubt, and they make decisions right on time. And that is what flow is. And we've all experienced this at one point in time. You want to get familiar with that. And like I said, when you're really being challenged and you go, oh gosh, this is not harmonious, I need to step away. It's powerful when you do that, because when you come back, you'll have time to process it and become more aware, so your actions and awareness become one. And the activity of the person becomes autotelic. And what does autotelic mean? Well, it's an autotelic personality. And here are the aspects of an autotelic personality. Your goals are intrinsic. That means they come from the inside. And next week, we're going to talk about motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. When your goals are intrinsic, when they come from inside you, you're more likely to achieve them. And you will learn that in the next episode. Your work is immersive. You get lost in your work. Picture the athlete who gets lost in the game, and they just look perfectly on the court. Their attention is unwavering. Their focus is there. And I can tell you, I'm in flow right now. Even though I'm still uncomfortable, I'm still finding the challenge and the skill being one. And it's really it's really a great feeling. And therefore, just like I'm saying, work is inherently enjoyable. You just have fun doing it. And trust me, I'm having fun. Habits and stop the mind screw. So desire is very important when it comes to building a habit. If you don't want to go to the gym, you're not going to build a habit of doing it. And that's so typical, and it's very understandable. But there are other ways to get exercise. You can find other things that you desire to do. You get clear on what you want and picture it from the end in mind. What do you want is step number 1 in Stop the Mind Screw. And when you decide what you want and you picture it from the end in mind, you picture yourself committing those actions and being that person and being whatever vision you picture, it'll be easy for you to understand that when you have the challenges, when you confront challenges that affect you, you go, oh, this is contributing to what I want. So I know I have to go through this to get to the other side. A mental diet is step number 2 in Stop the Mind Screw. And a mental diet is just simply not dwelling on negative thoughts. Become aware of your cues. And your cues, how do you look at them? Do you look at them in a negative way, or do you look at them in a way and dwell on that? Or do you look at them in a way that is more empowering for you? That's where a mental diet can help you. Your self-talk, evaluation, and thought habits are steps 3 and 4 in Stop the Mind Screw. How are you talking to yourself about things? And become aware. Awareness is key. Remember, awareness is key to breaking that unconscious habit. Become aware of the thought habits, the empowering and the disempowering habits. And where are you enabling bad habits? And your community, are they enabling the bad habits as well? Remember, avoid temptation. If your community is enabling you to continue this bad habit that you're trying to break, I get it. You can't be around your family. You can't say, I'm just leaving the whole family. Bye. I'm trying to build a new habit. No, you break it down into tiny pieces. And for, let's say, just one day you try to do the new habit and nobody really notices. You start building on that and you just build a little bit at a time. And it's just like I said, you can keep the little cue that you have that goes with it, but start breaking it away in tiny pieces and replacing it with other things that will either cause friction or help you avoid the bad habit. Revision and healing are step number 5 in Stop the Mind Screw. Revision comes from Neville Goddard's Pruning Shears of Revision, and what he does and he talks about is going at the end of your day, going through your whole day, and things that you were reactive to, things that you had a hard time with, you rewrite that in your mind before you go to sleep. And when you do that, your subconscious picks up on it and it changes the way you look at it. And we will definitely be talking about this a lot more. But when it comes to your habits, reframe your associations with your habits. What are your cues? What are your routines? What are your rewards? How can you rewrite those so they are empowering instead of disempowering? And you can journal on this and think on this, and this does not happen overnight. This is a process. What ends up happening is you find flow and you create harmony between challenge and the skill. And you eliminate distractions. You find community where there is power there. Make your cues, routines, and rewards harmonious. And finally, where does reality transurfing fit into this? The things that I teach from reality transurfing is to find advantage. Find advantage in everything. How can we do this when it comes to our habits? We can apply the fact that when we are reactive, when we do have a bad day, when we do have a trigger, when we do fall back into the bad habit patterns, we can look at it as, okay, this is a good sign because it's making me aware, number one. Number two, my world is always taking care of me, and this is contributing to my goal. It's contributing to what I want in the end in mind. Guardian and belief in change. So your guardian is like your higher being, your higher self, infinite intelligence, God, whatever you call it. But you have to have a belief in change and changing your behavior. You have to follow your intuition, which is your guardian. Follow your heart and intuition, for it somehow knows the way. That's Steve Jobs' quote from his commencement speech. And I follow back to this a lot of times because when I'm having a reactive situation or when I'm confronted with a bad habit, I fall back to my intuition and I actually have a conversation with my intuition and I realize how what's happening is contributing to my goal. It's keeping me in flow and it's keeping me on track. The mirror principle in reality transurfing, we'll talk about this a little bit more in another episode, but the mirror principle, think about it, when you look in a mirror, you can't change the reflection. But what you can change is how you perceive it in the mirror. And there's infinite levels of looking at the mirror. And it's a little bit deep, but it's really not. But there's, especially when you confront a problem, you've got to remember there's infinite solutions to every problem, because our brains, the way they were built to take care of us, they go, okay, I'm going to hone in on this one solution and that's all I'm going to have. But when you know there are infinite solutions, it makes it a lot easier to deal with and a lot easier to face. And pendulums are just a thought structure that everybody thinks that is contagious and tries to get you to just wants your energy. That's all a pendulum wants. And you need to have a belief in communities and changing lives. So Steve Jobs says, don't let the sound of other people's opinions drown out your own inner voice. Back to the guardian, back to the pendulums. Other people's opinions can drown out your own inner voice. And don't let that happen, because when you have that conversation with your higher being, God, infinite intelligence, you will start to find your own answers instead of everybody else's. And then set up a community of support. Even just one other person can help you. Just like groupthink, masterminds, putting it out there that you need support and help from other people who can help you go to the next level, help you build that healthy habit. Use the pendulum constructively like that. All right, that's my episode for today. I hope it helped. Thank you for watching today's episode. I hope you liked it. And if you know somebody who can benefit from this, please share it with them. And until next time, I'll see you next time.